Let's begin with a common misconception about what it truly means to be a woman of value. So often, society confuses value with loudness, with being demanding or perhaps difficult to handle. But in reality, a woman of true value doesn't need to raise her voice, manipulate others, or use guilt in order to earn respect. She knows that her value isn't something she has to announce or force on others. It shows in her every action, in her energy, and in her presence. Now here's the most important difference you need to understand: a demand versus a standard. A demand says you should do this or else. It's driven by the desire for control over someone else, fueled by fear and insecurity. On the other hand, a standard says this is who I am and this is what I accept in my life. Can you feel the difference? A demand tries to force someone into something. It's about manipulation. A standard is rooted in clarity and self-worth. It says, this is my energy, this is what I value, and if it doesn't align, I'll walk away without drama. This difference is critical. A woman who constantly seeks validation from others is often exhausted and frustrated. She chases approval, often losing herself in the process. A woman of true value, however, radiates calm confidence. She stands firm in who she is unapologetically. And this energy, this inner security is what sets her apart. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." A woman of value has embodied this wisdom. She doesn't lower her standards to keep someone around. She doesn't bend who she is to please others. She lives authentically, knows exactly who she is, and can express her truth clearly without the fear of rejection or criticism. How does a woman of value move? When you meet a woman of value, you feel her presence immediately. You sense her strength. She doesn't beg for attention, she doesn't chase anyone, she doesn't scream to make her point. Instead, she moves with calm, quiet confidence. Imagine this: she meets someone who initially seems interested, he's attentive, makes plans, calls regularly, shows genuine interest. But then something changes. He replies slower, becomes distant, and starts withdrawing. A woman without standards might panic. She might bombard him with messages. What's wrong? Why aren't you calling? She might begin chasing him, doubting herself, and abandoning her boundaries just to keep him interested. But a woman of value doesn't act like this. She stays grounded. She calmly says, "Hey, I noticed something has changed. If your interest is fading, that's okay. I just value honesty and clear communication. I don't play guessing games." Boom, that's it. No drama, no chasing, just clarity. She doesn't attack him, doesn't blame him. She simply sets the tone with grace, offering him the opportunity to be honest. At the same time, she makes it crystal clear that she doesn't accept ambiguity in her relationships. And here's the thing: men feel this energy. Real men respect it. Boys, on the other hand, feel intimidated by it. They see a woman like this as too much. But what they fail to realize is that her strength isn't in being loud, demanding, or manipulative. Her strength is in living with unwavering standards and owning her worth. Having standards isn't arrogance. Let me make something very clear. Having standards doesn't mean being arrogant. It doesn't mean being too much or conceited. It doesn't mean rejecting others just because they don't fit into your perfect picture. Having standards means you're protecting your own peace, your own energy, and your own value. A woman with standards communicates with grace. Not loudly, not disrespectfully, but firmly. She doesn't need to insult others or belittle anyone. She simply says, "This is what matters to me, this is what I expect, and if it doesn't fit, that's okay, but I won't shrink myself." This kind of clarity in communication comes from a deep sense of self-respect. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And that's exactly what a woman of value does. She looks inside, she recognizes her worth and awakens to the power of her own being. She understands that she doesn't need to beg for love, chase for attention, or shrink herself to be accepted. This is the awakening that changes everything. It changes how she speaks. It changes how she moves through the world. Her energy speaks before she even says a word. Have you ever met a woman like this? When she enters a room, you can feel it immediately. She doesn't have to say much. Her presence commands respect. She doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't overextend herself, and she doesn't settle for nonsense. She waits to be met with real intention, and when a man approaches her the wrong way, he quickly realizes, this is not a woman you can play games with. Because a woman of value doesn't need to scream her worth. She simply lives it. And because she lives it, her words carry weight. How a woman of value communicates. Beauty of a woman who truly values herself is in the way she speaks and the clarity of her words. She does not speak from a place of insecurity, but from a place of confidence and strength. You'll never hear her say, "Why don't you love me? Why didn't you call? What did I do wrong?" These kinds of questions come from fear. They come from desperation and insecurity. Instead, a woman of value says, "I noticed a change. Honesty is important to me. If you're no longer interested, that's okay. I respect it, but I won't chase anyone who doesn't want to stay." Do you notice the difference? That's emotional maturity in action. That is self-worth in action. She doesn't speak to provoke. She doesn't use guilt or emotional manipulation. Her words come from a place of self-assurance. And the beautiful thing is, when she speaks like this, she doesn't have to demand respect. It's given freely. She doesn't have to scream her value, she lives it. Her presence in a room says more than her words ever could. People can feel the power of her energy. They sense her self-respect, her self-worth, and they can't help but respect her in return. A woman of values communication is rooted in clarity. She doesn't over-explain herself. She doesn't apologize for her standards. She doesn't shrink herself to make others comfortable. She speaks directly, with purpose, and with a calm confidence that makes her words resonate. When she says, "I value commitment," "I don't tolerate ghosting or back-and-forth behavior," she's not trying to intimidate. She's not trying to be controlling. She's simply being clear about what she accepts and what she doesn't. And when she says, "I want a partnership, not a casual situation," she's not being too much. She's just being honest. She's setting clear expectations, and she's not afraid to lose someone who can't meet them. This kind of communication inspires respect and growth, not just from others, but from herself as well. A woman of value is not arrogant. Having standards does not make a woman arrogant. It doesn't make her too much or conceited. It doesn't mean she's rejecting everyone who doesn't fit her idea of perfection. What having standards does mean is that she is protecting herself. She knows her worth, and she's not afraid to communicate that. There's a common misconception that having standards means being inflexible or rigid. But the truth is, having standards is not about being difficult. It's about knowing who you are, what you deserve, and making sure others respect that. A woman of value doesn't demand perfection, but she demands respect, honesty, and clarity. She knows that the right person will meet her where she is, with no games, no manipulation, and no need to beg for attention. She knows that if a man is meant to be in her life, he will show up with intention and respect, not with empty promises or fleeting interest. This is why a woman of value doesn't chase. She doesn't overextend herself to make someone stay. She simply shows up as her authentic self and waits for those who are truly meant to be part of her life to recognize her worth and step forward. The growth of a woman of value. A woman of value hasn't always been this way. She didn't wake up one day knowing her worth and commanding respect from everyone around her. No, she has learned, she has grown. She's been through relationships where she stayed too long, gave too much, and received too little. She knows what it feels like to lose herself in a relationship. She has felt the pain of trying to save someone who wasn't even ready to be saved. But instead of becoming bitter, she used those experiences to grow stronger and wiser. She learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. She learned that compromise doesn't mean ignoring your own needs. And she learned that loyalty is not a badge of honor if it destroys you. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happens when women don't have standards. They fall into the same patterns, attracting the same kind of men, repeating the same painful experiences, and thinking it's all just bad luck. But when a woman awakens, she breaks the cycle. She realizes that she is not a pawn of fate. She has control over her choices, and she has the power of her words. She no longer seeks validation from anyone outside of herself. She has learned to trust herself, to listen to her intuition, and to make decisions based on her values, not out of fear or insecurity. The essence of a woman of value. The true essence of a woman of value is in the way she communicates, the way she holds herself, and the way she moves through the world. She doesn't chase after attention, she doesn't beg for love, and she doesn't shrink to fit into someone else's idea of who she should be. She stands tall in her own identity, and she allows only those who respect her to be a part of her life. When she speaks, she does so with clarity. When she sets boundaries, she does so with grace. When she loves deeply and without hesitation. But she also knows when to let go, when to walk away, and when to protect her peace. She knows that the key to a fulfilling, meaningful relationship is not in what she sacrifices or compromises, but in what she keeps for herself, her peace, her self-respect, and her authenticity. And the men who are serious, who are ready, will see this in her. They won't be intimidated by her standards. They will be inspired by them. They will rise to meet her not because they have to, but because they want to. They recognize that a woman who values herself is a woman who adds value to their life.